An emotional Whitney Port admitted she still wanted to have a second child after her devastating miscarriage but called the prospect of getting pregnant again scary and taxing. The reality star processed her miscarriage in a podcast recorded the day she received the devastating news from her doctor. Whitney, 36, cried as she recounted the heartbreaking outcome in a raw audio diary recorded on her phone last week. "Today, we found out as a final conclusion that the pregnancy was and is not viable," Whitney said on the newest episode of her podcast, With Whit. "There was no heartbeat. I went to the doctor today by myself, actually. I didn't even think that there was a possibility of bad news. I don't know why. I felt like I was feeling super hopeful from hearing that the baby had doubled in size last week, and I just felt like it was only up from here." Whitney, who has suffered 2 miscarriages and a chemical pregnancy in the past, said it felt like Groundhog's Day when her doctor broke the news to her. "He looked at the ultrasound and looked at me and raised his eyebrows and just shook his head, and in that moment, I just knew, and it just felt like Groundhog's Day, like, just the feeling of grief is all too familiar." Port said her doctor explained it's just a really unlucky set of circumstances and advised her to go to a fertility specialist and making healthy embryos if she wanted another child. "I'm just obviously going to start going down that journey and not even quite yet, I'm not even really fully ready to have that discussion, even though I know that we want a second kid, because the thought of not having a second kid makes me feel already too regretful and remorseful. But then, the thought of having to go through this physical illness and nausea of the first trimester is daunting and scary and taxing. I literally have not been able to do anything. Like I have felt like the laziest person." She also said she had been feeling really depressed as she felt she had been letting everybody down. "Like, I wasn't being a present mom. I wasn't being a present wife. I wasn't being a present employee and coworker and partner, and that I was just constantly disappointing people," she said. "I just don't want to be a mess anymore. You know, it was like, this is it. This is going to be that. I've dealt with the 2 miscarriages. This is going to be the healthy one. I'm not going to have to think about it anymore. I'm not going to have to make the decision of like, do I even want to have a second child anymore? Do I want to go through IVF? Do I want to make a child in a lab? I just didn't think I was going to have to answer all those questions, and now it just feels like I have a lot of responsibility to make those decisions." Whitney also harbored guilt over the fact she did have 4-year-old son Sonny when others haven't even had the opportunity to have one child. Towards the end of the podcast, however, Port said she was going to do her best to remain strong and positive. The reality star said she was going to attempt to take it day by day and not force anything on myself. Whitney announced the latest episode of her podcast with a poignant black and white selfie. "I found out Wednesday afternoon and recorded this that night. Needless to say, my words are emotional. My heart is with every single woman who has gone through this pain. I hope by sharing my feelings and story, some of you will not feel alone," she wrote in the caption. The episode comes a week after Whitney revealed her devastating pregnancy loss, and several weeks after announcing she was 7 weeks pregnant. "I'm so sad to say this, and some of you may have watched on our latest YouTube episode, but we lost the baby," Port wrote on her Instagram stories as she announced the heartbreaking news. We found out yesterday. I don't even really know what to say here. I recorded a full-on verbal diary of my thoughts and emotions last night that I'll put on my podcast next week. Sending all my love to those of you dealing with this right now. And I don't want to be insensitive by making light of it, but glass half full, I don't physically feel like complete SD anymore. Whitney was joined by her husband Tim Rosenman in an emotional video in which she recounted how her doctor had not heard a heartbeat. I went today for the 8 and 4-day ultrasound, and last week the baby had doubled and he heard the heartbeat, and this week there was no heartbeat, Whitney said as she broke the news to fans. Whitney and Tim, her husband of 6 years, share 4-year-old son Sonny together. The couple announced Whitney's pregnancy earlier this month in an emotional video where she admitted the pregnancy was likely another unhealthy one. The MTV vet has been candid with fans about her struggles expanding her family in recent years. The reality star suffered a miscarriage in 2019 and in early 2021. Revealing the heartbreaking news of her pregnancy earlier this year, she wrote, "I'm sad but I'm okay and we will try again. I also have so much sadness in my heart for anyone that has to go through this or has gone through this. I know though that our community will share, band together and support 'cause you always do."